Oh, baby, the season is right around the corner, and guess what that means? We are about to get some real answers and some real football. Before we kick off the first week of the NFL season, I wanted to take a look at some players that I am just most interested in going into this season. These are 6 players that, from a fantasy context, but also from just a general football fan, I'm very interested to watch. So let's get into it. First up, Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver 12 on KeepTradeCut, and wide receiver 10 on Dynasty Daddy's very own trade values powered by Dynasty Trades and Dynasty Drafts. You can now check that out on the site for free. We have an early beta for everyone, so definitely check that out. Fantasy points last year, he had 165 fantasy points, 116 targets, 62 receptions, 885 receiving yards, and 8 receiving touchdowns. Last year, obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. was one of the most hyped wide receiver prospects of all time, and he landed very high in the draft to the Cardinals, which everyone was like, this is a perfect landing spot given the Kyler Murray situation. There wasn't a clear wide receiver one. Now we actually have one. First one since D-Hop, prime D-Hop, when they traded for him. Unfortunately, the first year was a little bit underwhelming from what we were hoping for, especially compared to his contemporaries. And you also add in the fact that Kyler and Marv never really felt like they were on the same page either. There were some weird reports in the media and all of that. If we take a look at the Cardinals' offense in general, last year they ranked 21st in passing yards and passing attempts, so a slightly below average passing attack for the Cardinals. Real talk, a big reason why Kyler's regression as a passer last year was so pronounced was the rushing attack was elite behind James Conner, ranking 2nd in the entire NFL in average yards and 7th in total yards. So oftentimes it was like, why do we even need to be forcing the ball, figuring out chemistry here? We can just run it super efficiently. Add in the Trey McBride piece as he continues to emerge as one of the best tight ends in the league with 147 targets, which basically made him the real wide receiver one in the Cardinals offense. Even though McBride does have a hefty target share, Marv still had over 100 targets, so the opportunities were there. One thing to note out of this, though, was that out of the 116 targets in 2024, a league high 45 were considered uncatchable. So it's a little bit of inflation there with what targets were actually targets. What you might be thinking was Kyler can't throw over the middle. That's kind of the big question that we need to look at going into this year is, can Kyler improve in that area? If we take a look at Marvin Harrison Jr. last year, his quality target rating was 4.78, which ranked 68th among NFL wide receivers. For comparison, this is much lower than his rookie peers, reflecting largely on the throws he received rather than the individual efforts of Marvin Harrison Jr. Only 68.1% of his targets were deemed catchable, well below players like Malik Neighbors, who had 74.1%, and Brian Thomas Jr.'s, which had 73.7%. So Neighbors and BTJ not only got more targets, but they got significantly better targets. If Kyler can improve his target quality, this will certainly boost Marvin Harrison Jr. going forward. The way I see it, is Marv a true elite wide receiver like Chase or Jefferson, or is he kind of a Garrett Wilson type player that lives off his name and puts up wide receiver 2 production? Given all that breakdown, let's take a look at 2 trades that happened recently. First up, we got Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill for Marvin Harrison Jr. in a second, in a 2 QB 14 team start 9 league, so rather deep league with 14 teams. If you're a contender, I'm okay moving Marv. Give me the guaranteed production because I can't deal with Marv having the expensive price but not living up to the name. But if you're a rebuilder team, I think this is a completely amazing deal for you to say, hey, give me the upside of Marv, also bag a second as well. Another trade here in a 1 QB 12 team start 9 league, AJ Brown in a second for Marv. To me, it's like, hey, similar process. If I'm a rebuilder team, need that production now, might as well cash out. AJ Brown also has more of an insulation around him versus a Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm not completely out on Marv. I still think he's someone that could reach that level that we all thought he could. It really comes down to, can that passing offense improve, and can Kyler get the ball to Marv? Not just throw the ball his way, but you have some quality targets there. Next up, player number 2, Caleb Williams, QB 11 on KeepTradeCut and QB 7 on Dynasty Daddy trade values. Again, this is another generational prospect, with quotes, generational prospect from the 2024 draft class that was supposed to right the ship in Chicago. Let's take a look at last year's production. He had 260 fantasy points, 351 passing completions, 3,541 passing yards, 20 passing touchdowns, and 6 passing interceptions. The core of this weird first year was the dysfunctional situation in Chicago that should be addressed by hiring Ben Johnson. Obviously, he was someone that was biding his time, trying to figure out the best situation for him. Someone finally enticed Ben Johnson to jump ship from Detroit, and hopefully this situation will just be fixed. with all the dysfunction that we had previously. The horror stories of Caleb Williams watching film by himself and the unserious organizational moves, like keeping a lame duck coach and firing him, basically makes the first year a mulligan, in my opinion. Some other things to note. O-line metrics. We cannot excuse his ability to take sacks. Last year, the O-line was in middle of pack, especially towards the end of the year, although they struggled early. Of 68 sacks last year, and second was Stroud with 52. So it wasn't even, he was first, but it was close. It was first by a lot. So he definitely needs to process the offense better, get the ball out much quicker. One of Ben Johnson's first orders of business was signing Drew Dahlman from Atlanta and trading for both Joe Toonley and Jonah Jackson. So this offensive line should be much improved. Ideally, middle of the pack, potentially pushing top 10. So the excuses will start running out for Caleb Williams if they cannot figure it out. Improving his sack rate will be crucial to keeping those drives alive, and that is the biggest red flag for me from his first season. I often think about the Bryce Young situation in comparison with Caleb Williams. Obviously, the Panthers made moves to address the O-line and then provided top half of the league O-line for Bryce Young to get comfortable with. Now, it was a little bit rough last year, but eventually Bryce was able to find himself and get the confidence there, and I'm hoping that happens to Caleb as well. Not to constantly compare Caleb and Bryce because they were technically traded for each other, but I think this situation is the best situation that Caleb Williams can be in going into year 2. Let's hope he can live up to it. Let's take a look at 2 quick trades. This is Caleb Williams for a future first, Quinton Judkins. Obviously, I screenshotted that before all the information came out. I would just replace Judkins with like a Henderson or a Harvey or someone in that range, and Spencer Rattler. To me, I think this is a decent deal, especially in a 10-team Superflex league. The reality is Caleb Williams will probably not be impactful enough in a 10-team Superflex league to actually matter. Here's another example, similar type trade. 2 QB 12-team start 11, Egbuka and a future first. These are deals where it's like, hey, if I need to re-roll a Caleb Williams, I don't hate doing it. You can probably find similar-ish production, but the Caleb Williams ceiling is rather high still. So these are some trades I thought were interesting. My personal take is we got that mulligan on the first year. Let's see how he does. Hopefully he can improve those sacks, but I still am a believer in the talent that Caleb Williams has. Next up, the running back of the offseason, Breece Hall, RB10 on KeepTradeCut and Dynasty Daddy. I mean, what's going on? What's going on with our boy here? So starting off last year, he had 212 fantasy points, 209 rushing attempts with 876 yards, 5 rushing touchdowns with an added 483 receiving yards. Pretty decent year. Our fantasy darling the past couple of years has blown his prime years with injuries and now is facing a surprisingly competitive backfield in New York. Breece's day of being the centerpiece dynasty asset are probably long gone, but can he still be a sole contributor in New York, or is there the upside of him being traded somewhere? The biggest change for the Jets is the Justin Fields piece of the offense signing a 2-year deal. Adding in Justin Fields will shake up Breece's traditional usage, adding another running threat to that offense. One thing to consider, though, is like Fields will steal some of the designated carries. It can sometimes depress some of the RB rushing upside that we'll see from less mobile passers. On a positive note, though, the league average RB checkdown rates for quarterbacks tend to hover in 7 to 10%, while Justin Fields is 15.5 passing rate. So while that means we might see a little bit of a dip in terms of his actual rushing opportunities, Breece Hall is certainly a great check down artist, can certainly win in space with the ball. So he could actually recoup some of that value by just getting some more of those check downs from Justin Fields. To me, the first couple of weeks are going to be key to understand what this running back room will look like. We've seen all the hype about Braylon Allen and Davis, and there's a lot that can happen, plus these trade rumors that are out there. But if Breece Hall is there, I still feel decently confident that he'll have a decent role. Even if he loses some of his rushes, the checkdown should make up for it, given that Breece is much more of a pass-catching skill set than the other guys in the backfield. Let's take a look at a couple trades that I thought were interesting surrounding Breece Hall. We got Joe Burrow and Breece Hall for Lamar Jackson and ETN. This is an interesting, hey, let me tier up, get the distressed asset. I like this type of deal, especially in a 2 QB, 10-team league, rather shallow. Lamar Jackson's going to be way more impactful, in my opinion. Burrow is someone that doesn't have the rushing upside of a Lamar. So I don't mind saying, let me tier up in a league like this. Another example, you got the whole Jets backfield here. Justin Fields, Breece Hall for James Conner, Strange in the first. I get it. If you're saying, hey, 2 QB, 8-team league, Justin Fields probably doesn't matter a ton. Breece Hall, probably matters a little, but if I can just pick up James Conner, who will produce similarly, pick up a future first, I also understand a deal like that. So those are some interesting moves I saw surrounding Breece Hall. Next up, we got Travis Hunter, Jacksonville Jaguars legend, already the most interesting player from last year's draft. I don't really know what the hell to think. There's going to be a ton of opinions, and I cannot wait to just look at all the data, all the snap sheets, how many defensive snaps, how many offensive snaps. I just think that's going to be so interesting. We have never seen a player that has this high of a draft capital in this type of pedigree that also plays two positions at a high level. So I'm very interested to see what happens. We've definitely seen some players that play special teams and offense, or like a mix of two, but not two positions at such a high level that probably could start on either side of the field. A big note for me personally is the Jacksonville Jaguars trading up to actually get Hunter. Makes me feel like he can't just play one or the other. I think he's going to end up being a versatile piece. Add in the fact that Liam Cohen made this blockbuster trade right out of the gate. Like, this is his first thing. My hunch is that they wouldn't have made this move if he doesn't play both sides to some extent. Very few wide receivers and cornerbacks get picked that high, and this class was weaker at wide receiver than most. So the fact that he went up and picked him second, and you already have Brian Thomas Jr., it doesn't make sense if you're only going to use him as a wide receiver, in my opinion. So how do we deal with this situation? I hate to say it. I think this is just a monitor. We have to monitor the situation. What does his offensive and defensive snap share look like right out of the gate? I hear so many takes. I hear some people say he's better at cornerback. He's better at wide receiver. He should play this. He should play that. Ultimately comes down to how do the coaches want to use him, and how does he hold up with that much usage? Also, from a fantasy perspective, can he even make a big impact with whatever usage he's getting? Obviously, if he's playing in an IDP league, I mean, you're locked and loaded. But if it's purely offense, it's harder to know. One thing to note as well is with a new coach, usage is volatile just across the board. So we have no idea what the usage of many players on the roster will look like. Certainly, this is going to be the most interesting team to watch week one. It's going to be what are the Jags doing with Travis Hunter, what's going on there, and to kind of understand what does a Cohen head coached offense look like. Here's a couple trades to take a look at that I thought were interesting. Omarion Hampton for Tootin and Hunter. Basically a trade up. In most leagues, Hampton's going higher than Hunter. But I don't blame someone for saying, hey, let me just get off the Pandora's box that is Travis Hunter of what is going to happen. Another trade here. We got Bucky for Hunter straight up. In a shallow league, 10-team start 9. Is Hunter going to have the usage to support at high-level wide receiver production? I don't know. I don't know. It's hard for me to make that bet. So for me, I also understand trades like this. He's certainly the most interesting player, but I also feel like the outcome that he becomes like that true upper echelon wide receiver like Jefferson, CD, Amon-Ra is so slim, because if he plays a decent amount of time on defense, it's going to be hard to be able to do that. I mean, it's just physically might not be possible at the next level. We keep rolling on with JJ McCarthy, QB 13 on KeepTradeCut and QB 17 on Dynasty Daddy. His first season was a redshirt rookie season. JJ is finally getting the start. Last year, Darnold rose from the dead on the Vikings and brought them together with a elite passing offense and an impressive 14-3 record. The finger pointing will be very quick if JJ McCarthy cannot put together a decent offense. We do expect him to have some rookie mistakes, but the fact that Darnold took him 14-3 last year with a solid O-line, a two-headed RB attack, and 3 high-quality passing options, JJ is the only significant difference in that offense that set the pace last year. Not a ton of wiggle room for him. Let's take a couple looks at the team stats last year. Total passing yards, 4,379, which was 6th in the NFL last year, and passing touchdowns of 35, which is 5th in the NFL. Personally, I just think the value swings here could be massive. It could be kind of that Jordan Love situation where he has that insulated value. Everyone's like, what could this be? And then he takes off and lives up to the hype and surpasses it. Or it could also be something where it just falls flat. Personally, for me, the value is so high for JJ because the Vikings optimism that it's hard for me to want to buy into him right now. Without a obvious elite rushing upside, which he has shown some athleticism, so maybe they work that into his game more. But the QB 13 price point is steep for a quarterback that hasn't played when there's other players around him that are probably going to score better in a fantasy context. Let's take a look at a few trades here. First up, we got Tet and JSN for JJ McCarthy, Ayuk in the first. I think this deal is amazing. In a super flex 12-team, start 10. Get off an injured dude that's probably not going to score. Get off a potential decent quarterback and a first and I lock in 2 young, high upside wide receivers, I would definitely do that. Another example here is just, hey, let me re-roll for a first and a second. You already make profit, and you don't have to risk anything there. So JJ is certainly someone I'm very excited to watch heading into this year. Just so many outcomes that could happen. Lastly, and this hurts as a Panthers fan, but lastly, Drake London, wide receiver 8 on KeepTradeCut and wide receiver 8 on Dynasty Daddy. The 24-year-old wide receiver who's always next up is set for a huge breakout season for the Falcons, with the Falcons making some win-now moves. Let's take a look at his 2024. Last year, he had 230 fantasy points, 158 targets, 100 receptions, 1,200 receiving yards, and 9 receiving touchdowns. The Falcons hammered defense this offseason, adding rookies Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr., albeit in a risky trade-up, and signing Leonard Floyd. While they did lose Grady Jarrett, the vet, the insurgence of defensive youth should help improve what was a defense struggling to tread water last year. One concern on the offense is the loss of center Drew Dahlman. They did re-sign Jake Matthews, so hopefully the loss doesn't shake up the chemistry of the O-line. As a team that's slightly below average in both offensive and defensive EPA, this team will need to make a big jump forward if they really want to not be a laughingstock with that James Pierce Jr. trade. That was a pretty shocking trade. My fear is that a Drake London may be more of a T. Higgins tierish player and not that CD level player. Without a consistent high outcome, paying top dollar for wide receiver 2 production is an easy way to get stuck in the middle of the pack in Dynasty. I want to make sure if I am paying up for a Drake London that I feel confident in what his upside is. But if anyone can do it, I think it's personally Drake London, because the improvements of the Falcons situation and late season Penix performances should totally boost what was already a pretty impressive 2024 from him. With defensive improvements as well, there is some uncertainty, but I'm confident that he can live up to the hype and really break into that next tier where we're valuing him with the big dogs at the Dynasty wide receivers. Let's take a look at a couple trades we got here. We got Drake London in a 310 for Puka. I mean, to me, it's like, hey, which one do you like more? I'm not the biggest fan of these 1-for-1 type deals, but if you are trying to say, hey, I don't believe in Drake London, taking that leap and getting into that Puka level production, then I don't blame you for doing something like that. Here's another trade I think is amazing. Some people are a little bit lower on what Drake London can do. If you can take an A.J. Brown in a second and get a Drake London in a first, toss in Isaiah Likely, like who cares, but in a half PPR, half tight end premium, I think this is an amazing tier down to pick up good value at a player that's younger and probably going to perform better than A.J. Brown. And that wraps up the 6 most interesting players heading into 2025. These aren't players I don't like or like necessarily. They're players that I think have the widest range of outcomes just based on what they can do in 2025. So I'm super excited to actually watch how these players navigate the 2025 season and what the hell happens. I'm just excited to have football back. There's something exciting that's going to be on my TV. No more Love Island. Sorry. I don't know if my wife watches this far. Anyway, if you were a fan of this episode, make sure to hammer. I shouldn't do that. Do the YouTube stuff. Also, check out our Tuesday night live streams. We break down trades. So if you have any trades and want personal feedback, definitely check that out. And as always, you can see me, dynasty-daddy.com, or on the YouTube channels. We got a lot going on here. But again, appreciate you sitting through all of this. And football's back, baby.